John Clayton saved a woman dying in the desert, not knowing she wasn't just an Indian, but a queen of the Apache. Her own life was hanging by a thread due to the betrayal of a man who wanted to sell her for power. But what should have been the end became the beginning of an incredible alliance, where old enemies became the only hope for justice. This story will show that wisdom is more important than strength, and honor is more precious than gold. Watch to the end to find out how this shocking story ends, because in the finale you will find not only a stunning denouement, but also a deep lesson. Don't forget to subscribe and like, so you don't miss the continuation. John Dusty Clayton, as he was nicknamed for the eternal layer of desert dirt on his boots, knew this land. He knew every ravine, every dried-up creek, and every ominous cactus sticking up like a dead man's finger. But what he saw this day didn't fit on any of his maps. On the scorching earth, under the blinding sun, lay a woman. Her breath was weak, and her skin, though dark, was covered in a thin layer of dust. Her clothes, decorated with beads and leather strips, spoke of her origin, Apache. Clayton, a tall, muscular man with sun-faded eyes and a stern face, was used to hatred. His father and brother were killed by Indians in a skirmish many years ago. Since then, his heart had been covered with the same thick crust as his boots. He considered Indian savages incapable of compassion, and this lying woman was just another confirmation of his beliefs, another victim of their own barbarism, he thought, and his first thought was simply to ride by. But something in her face, in her half-open, desperate eyes, stopped him. It was the look of a cornered animal, but not a wild one, but a wounded one. John walked closer. There were no visible wounds on her body, but the exhaustion was obvious. She tried to whisper something, but only a dry wheeze came from her mouth. He carefully lifted her, feeling how light she was, almost weightless. Her hair, thick and dark, smelled of dust and herbs. The motives for his actions were unclear even to himself. Maybe it was the instinct of an old war veteran who couldn't leave a dying person, even an enemy. Or was it that there was nothing in her appearance of the cruelty he was used to seeing in his memories? He sat her on his horse, carefully holding her, and they slowly started on their way. The desert was silent, only the wind was rustling in his ears. John, looking at her, felt hatred for her people, who had brought so much grief to his family, for this very land, which had brought him to her. He couldn't understand what was stopping him from just leaving her, but he kept moving. A few hours later they reached his modest shack. Her condition worsened. Fever overtook her. For the next few days, against his will,
I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, so you will help me in motivation to make such great stories for you, and I will see that you like them. Enjoy watching, everyone.
He took care of her, like a person. He gave her water, nursed her with herbal decoctions he had learned from an old Mexican healer. He was stern and silent, but his actions spoke louder than words. He couldn't leave her to die, no matter how much his pride resisted. He knew he was doing something his father would not have approved of. When the fever subsided, she opened her eyes. They were a deep, night sky color, and there was no gratitude in them, no fear, only a proud, intense scrutiny. She wasn't like the Apache he had seen. She was dressed in clothes that spoke of her high status. She was young, but her gaze showed wisdom and strength. Around her neck hung a necklace of bear claws, and on her wrists wide bracelets with engraved symbols. "My name is Kaina," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but firm. John Clayton, standing at the door, froze. He had heard that name many times. It was the name of the Apache queen, the one who united the scattered tribes and led them to victory. The one who was a legend and a symbol of strength. His mind filled with memories of battles and raids, of how the Apache attacked suddenly, like ghosts. This was the very woman he hated with all his heart, the very enemy he had saved. And at that moment, an intrigue flashed in his soul. Why was she here? Why alone, dying in the desert? This question began to displace the hatred, forcing him to look at her differently, not as an enemy, but as a mystery he now had to solve. John, stunned and confused, stood at his door. The name Kaina echoed in his head, like hammer blows. Just yesterday he would have gladly traded her head for $100, but now he had saved her. And not just a woman, but a queen, a symbol of a people hostile to him. In his heart, always as hard as stone, a strange rift appeared, into which curiosity, interest, penetrated. Why was she here? How did a queen end up alone, on the brink of life and death, in the desert that was her home? He walked up to her, Kainal looked completely different from the pictures in the newspapers he had seen in saloons. There she was depicted as fierce and cruel, with a face distorted by rage. Here, an exhausted, but incredibly proud woman sat before him. Her dark eyes watched his every move, expressing neither fear nor weakness. "Why did you save me?" Her voice was low and strong, despite her recent illness. John didn't know what to answer. He was used to speaking with a rifle, not words. "I don't know," he finally said, looking away. "You were dying. Dying white people don't evoke such compassion from you." She smiled wryly, and there was no malice in that smile, only bitter truth. Her words hurt him. He wanted to object, to say that he hated her people, that his family, but he remained silent. Instead, he brought her a piece of jerky and a mug of water. She ate slowly, with dignity. It seemed that every gesture of hers was thought out, as part of a ritual. John, who had previously avoided any closeness, began to spend time with her, albeit silently. He mended his gear. She wove something that looked like a basket from dry grass. In those moments there were no words between them, only silence, filled with the crackling of fire and the sounds of the desert. He watched her, noticing every detail, how cleverly her fingers handled the tough fibers, how her eyes shone when she remembered something, how she sat with a straight back, even when her body was still weak. He admired her resilience. She didn't complain, didn't ask. She was like the desert itself, harsh, but incredibly strong and resilient. One evening, as the sun was setting behind the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades, John broke the silence. "Why were you alone? What happened to your people?" The question came out on its own. Kainal was silent for a long time, looking at the smoldering coals. "We didn't seek war with you. Our lands were our home. But your people, they came, took everything they needed, and then left, leaving death behind." She spoke calmly, without hatred, just stating the facts. "We were hunted. We were forced to flee. My people, they separated. I went ahead to find a safe place. I was betrayed." The word betrayed sounded like a shock. John didn't expect that. He thought the Indians were united, as one whole. "Who?" He involuntarily leaned closer. "The one I considered a brother. The one who wanted to take my place. He wanted to turn me over to your people, get a reward, and become king." Steel appeared in her voice. John, who had himself experienced betrayal from those he considered his own, understood this pain. His father, whom he so respected, was involved in dark deeds which left their family mired in debt. He ran from it, from his own truth, to start a new life, but the past haunted him. This was not just a coincidence, but a strange, fateful similarity. He set up an ambush. Kainal continued. "My people thought I had died, but I survived. I survived to return and get revenge." Her eyes flashed in the light of the fire. It was not anger, but determination. She was not talking about simple revenge, but about restoring justice, about saving her people. This struck John. Her motives were pure, despite all the cruelty of the world they lived in. He saw not a savage, but a queen who was ready to sacrifice everything for her people. In his heart, where hatred had recently lived, compassion was born. He saw her pain, her determination, her loneliness. He understood that her story was not the story of a savage, but the story of a person cornered. He felt something for her that surpassed his previous beliefs. It was respect, which now grew into an alliance. John Clayton, a man whose life was forged from loneliness and prejudice, now sat opposite the woman he should have hated, listening to her story. Kaina's words echoed in him. She spoke of betrayal, of fighting for her people. It was surprising for him, accustomed to a harsh world where only the fittest survived, to see how she, despite all her strength, carried the burden of responsibility for others. This evoked in him not just respect, but also deep compassion. He understood her motives. He himself, once, faced betrayal and knows what it means. "The one who betrayed you. What's his name?" John asked, and there was no trace of his former hostility in his voice. "Choco," she answered, and the name sounded like a curse. "He was my chief warrior. The Apache now think I'm dead, but they are waiting for a sign to gather. If I don't return, Choco will seize power. He will lead our people to their death. He believes that war can only be won with cruelty." John frowned. He knew Choco. His reputation was ominous even among the whites. He was ruthless, and rumors of his raids, which always ended in a bloody massacre, quickly spread. "I'll help you," John said, and these words broke from his lips before he had time to think. Kainal raised her eyebrows at him, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Why would you do that? A white man helping an Apache? Her voice wasn't mocking, but rather distrustful. For justice, and for your family, he said, remembering his father's words about honor. A man without honor is like a desert without water. He finally understood that by saving her, he was restoring the honor he had lost in his youth, and, perhaps, saving himself. Kaina looked at him intently, trying to understand his true motives. Good. She nodded, and there was no doubt on her face, only determination. Then we will go to raid Rock Canyon. All the elders will gather there. They will decide who will lead our people. John began to gather supplies. They knew the journey would be dangerous. They would have to pass through lands where they could both be killed, him for helping Indians, her as a traitor who was rumored to be dead. Their journey began at dawn. They moved quickly, but cautiously, avoiding roads and settlements. John, thanks to his experience as a tracker, found safe trails, and Kaina, whose knowledge of the desert was innate, helped him find water and shelter. They became a single alliance, complementing each other. John was the strength, and Kaina was the wisdom. My people think white people are a disease, Kaina said quietly, as they rested under a rock. And, in a way, they are right. Your trains, your cities, they destroy our land. But you are not like that. John didn't answer, but her words made him think. He had always seen the conflict as black and white, us against them. But now he saw a shade of gray that changed everything. He saw the pain in her eyes when she spoke of loss, and understood that desperation was hidden behind the cruelty. After a few days they stumbled upon an ambush. They were not Choco's Apache, but a detachment of white bounty hunters who had been hired to find and kill her. John immediately knew things were bad. There were many of them, and they were armed to the teeth. I'm leaving. You have only yourself to blame for being here, one of the hunters, with a sneer, said to John. I'm not leaving. She's mine, John replied, and there wasn't a hint of fear in his voice. The fight began. John, being an experienced marksman, fired back, and Kaina, armed with a bow and arrows, fought with incredible dexterity. She moved silently, like a shadow, and her arrows found their targets. They worked as a pair, as one whole. John covered her, she, him. When the last of the hunters fell, they stood, breathing heavily. John was wounded in the shoulder. Kaina, without hesitation, began to treat his wound. Her touches were confident and gentle, and John involuntarily squinted with relief. He felt the threads of their alliance getting stronger and stronger. Now they were connected not only by circumstances, but also by blood. At the moment she was bandaging his shoulder, an old Apache man came up to them. His face was wrinkled like old parchment, and his eyes were full of surprise. You're alive, Kaina. His voice was full of admiration. And with a white man. He is my ally, Kaina said firmly, not taking her eyes off John's wound. He saved me. He will help me reclaim what is rightfully mine. The old man, looking at their alliance, felt hope. John, in turn, saw not hatred in his eyes, but curiosity. He finally understood that their battle was not a war between two peoples, but a battle for justice that had no skin color. He felt that he was doing something important, something that went beyond his personal pain and prejudice. The old Apache man, whose face was etched with wrinkles like a desert map, looked at John with surprise. He saw the white man protecting their queen. His gaze, full of wisdom and weariness, slowly shifted to Kaina. You are with him? He asked, and there was compassion in his voice for both sides. He saved my life, grandfather, said Kaina, and I believe he will help us. The word grandfather was the key. John understood that he was not just an elder, but a relative who was still worried about his granddaughter and her fate. In her eyes, when she looked at the old man, there was no pride, only tenderness. This was the moment when John understood that a vulnerable soul was hidden under the queen's armor. The old man nodded and led them to the gorge. There, in the deep shade, the other elders had gathered. They were just as harsh and silent. When they saw Kaina, their eyes widened in surprise. And when they saw John next to her, their faces became stony. Choco, a tall and powerful warrior with a cold gaze, stepped forward. A poisonous smile played on his face. He was confident in his victory. You've returned, sister. His voice was full of feigned joy. We mourned you, and you, it turns out, have found a new master. These words, poisonous as snake venom, made John clench his fists. He realized that Choco was the very antagonist he had been looking for. Kaina didn't flinch. Choco, you betrayed me and our people. You wanted to sell me to the whites to gain power. I have returned to reclaim my right. Choco laughed. You and this white dog against me and my warriors. Elders, don't you see? She betrayed her people, brought a white man to our land. The situation was at a breaking point. John felt the tension. He was alone against everyone, except for Kaina. He understood that they needed support, that their words had to be more convincing than Choco's. We didn't come with war, John said loudly, and his voice was firm. I myself lost my family because of war. I know what pain is, but I also know that not all white people are enemies, just as not all Apaches are ruthless killers. This woman is your queen. She is here to save you from the wrong path, from one who craves power more than the good of his people. These words were like a spark thrown into a bonfire. The elders exchanged glances. Their faces expressed doubt. They trusted Kaina, but her alliance with a white man was unthinkable. Then the old grandfather came forward and said, I saw them together. I saw how this man, who had no reason to care about us, saved my granddaughter. He doesn't crave gold. He seeks justice. Are you ready to believe a lie, and the truth is standing right in front of you? Choco pulled out a knife, his eyes bloodshot. A lie? He's lying. Kill him. But the elders didn't move. Their faces were full of doubt. Finally, one of them raised his hand. We will judge. Choco, you cannot attack him. We will judge according to the old customs, he said. For several hours, they discussed the situation. John told about Choco's betrayal. Kaina, supporting his words, showed the scar on her arm that was left after the treacherous blow. Finally, they came to a decision. Choco was stripped of his position, and Kaina regained her right to lead the people. And John, he was allowed to stay. When everything was decided, Kaina walked up to John. You could have left, she said. Why did you stay? I couldn't abandon someone who needed help, he replied, looking at her. I know what it means to be abandoned. There was such sincerity in his words that it made her heart tremble. She, the queen of a strong people who had always relied only on herself, now understood that she didn't have to be alone. She held out her hand to him. He, once a lonely wanderer, found in her not only a friend, but also a new family. Their alliance was not just a political decision, it was a union born from the ashes. Conclusion. The story of John and Kaina is not just an adventure in the Wild West. It is a story about how strong human prejudices can be, but how humanity and compassion are stronger. In today's world, where we are surrounded by walls of distrust based on nationality, religion, politics, this story teaches us that the most important bridge is the bridge between hearts. The walls of hatred can be destroyed and an alliance can be built only through understanding and empathy. This is a lesson that is always relevant. No matter who you are or where you are from, it is important that your actions are dictated by honor and kindness.